Hello everyone, it's the Eelmite. Today we're going to be talking about the comparison of Runarcana to 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. When it was originally created, Runarcana was essentially 5th edition with a little bit of extra, and while it is still very obvious that it is stemming in the world of 5e and it has a lot of overlapping systems, I feel like at this point there is enough that has been added that I would say it is clearly a different system. So we're going to just compare the Runarcana and 5th edition character creation process and kind of how characters work for the player, not necessarily the broader system. And I feel like being able to identify what's similar and different in the characters that you are creating is a pretty good indicator of, you know, how different the game really is and what things you have to look forward to when you play Runarcana, hopefully. So this is kind of a guided introduction to the whole thing, and we're just going to jump right into it. But first, a couple of disclaimers. First, yes, I'm doing this through a slideshow. I started writing a script and then started collecting images and realized this just makes so much more sense to have some of the text on the screen, so we're going to do that. All of the content that I am talking about is from the Runarcana wiki, so that's thing number one. A lot of this, or some of this, is from the Portuguese version that hasn't been translated yet, but most of it is from the English translated version at this time. Not every single thing has been translated to English yet, just because that's a ton of work, and, you know, small team and they're working on it. Thing number two, the system was originally, as I said earlier, a reskin of D&D 5e, and it is still fairly similar in a lot of aspects. And this video / stream takes the makes the assumption that you already know a good amount about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition because it's a comparison video. But I'll try to explain some stuff as we go through. This is all as of version 0.96. Some of this content will be removed for version 1.0. I might reference some subclasses that don't exist or will be released later as like additional content. So just take that as it is. This is just as things stand for now, as things are being developed. And then lastly, I'm only overviewing things. We're going to do some future streams where we do a deeper dive into, specific classes and subclasses or specific origins, things like that. So today we're just doing general overview things of some of the big picture stuff. And I'm realizing that my face is too big for where the text is, and hopefully nothing uses that tiny corner. So with that, let's jump right into it. Also, I'm going to put all of the 5e comparison stuff in orange. So anything that's true for Runarcana is in white, and then anything in orange is me saying it's like this thing for 5th edition. So we're going to go through the character creation process. Starting up is what Ardu in his little preview describes as concept creation. And the concept creation is kind of before you even do anything mechanical. We're thinking of a vibe or specifics if you have them. But, you know, I want to play some badass person who has a big gun and is really aggressive. Some kind of vibe like that. Or I want to be able to turn into a squirrel and eat people, like whatever random thing you can come up with. Starting out with concepts. Bestiary Dominus, hello, welcome. Today we're doing an overview comparing and contrasting Runarcana and 5th edition rather than focusing on specifically creature creation or anything like that, because I realize that would be a good thing to do, given that a lot of my friends that watch some of my content and ask a lot of questions know nothing about Runarcana and have played 5th edition. So I wanted to kind of explain how things are similar and how things are different. In general, the kind of thing that we talk about a lot when we are playing, or when we're talking in the Discord, is when you're playing Runarcana, don't just be Caitlin, don't just be Jinx, don't just be Teemo. Create your own character. A lot of times, questions we used to get all the time in the Discord was, hey, how do I play Caitlin in 5th edition? And that is not what Runarcana is. It's a completely different system. And 5e starts the same way. So the similarity for concept creation is you are just trying to come up with an idea of the type of character you would like to play. So step number 2 is origin and region. So our origin is your genetic makeup. And in 5th edition, they use the word race. The overall structure for Origin and 5th edition's race, or what other systems call ancestry, they are incredibly similar. They are what dictate a lot of the basic things about your type of character. We'll go into some more specifics later. But at its core, Origin and race are almost identical in design. So very little has changed there. But then we have region, and region is where geographically are you from, or possibly where you were raised. And that kind of tells you a little bit more. Bestiary Dominus, thank you so much for the subscription. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. So, as I was saying, for region is where geographically you're from, and it's either where you were born or where you are raised. It kind of depends on you. And in this particular system, where you are from matters a lot. Runarcana assumes you are in Runeterra. Runarcana assumes that you are somewhat familiar with the Legends of Runeterra or League of Legends universe, because if you are from Zaun, you are going to get certain traits and access to certain traits that you wouldn't if you were from Bilgewater or if you were from the Freljord. So your region actually does matter, and this is very different than 5th edition, where if you were to say you were from, wherever in the world of Dungeons and Dragons, that's not going to have any mechanical ramifications. So for Origin and region for step 2, Origin, basically just race, very little has changed, and then region has some pretty big impacts, which is kind of cool. So as I said, Origin does determine a lot, so I wanted to go through what our origins are, and if there is something kind of similar, to what we see in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, I will say that, but because it's the universe of League of Legends, obviously things are going to be quite a bit different than the Canon 5e lore. First is things that Origin determines. First is your heritage points, which we're going to talk about later, and then all of the other normal stuff that you would see in 5th edition. Different origins have different ages, or age ranges, sizes, movement speeds, languages they can speak. Sometimes there's a proficiency here or there, a bunch of special features and various things like that. So it determines a ton of stuff. At the base game, as things currently stand, which may or may not change depending on what Ardu decides for the 1.0 release that's coming, these are the origins that we can see. The first one is human. Human is by far the most popular, the most common. It's also the same thing as in 5th edition. The things you get for being a human are different, but a human is a human is a human. We also have the Anthroplante, which are either, think like Ivern, or if you're not familiar with League of Legends, something like Groot from the Marvel Universe. And then we also have the other kind, which is more in line with like Zyra. So if you are a plant person, and we don't have something like that in base 5th edition. The next one is construct. Now, construct is something that is constructed. They are not born, they are created. And this is a little bit similar to a 5th edition Warforged, but they have so many differences. I'm kind of stretching by saying it's like a Warforged. There are different forms of constructs that kind of have like sub-races sub-origins that are really, really cool. Bestiary, I just read your message and I appreciate you. Thank you. It's very kind. We also have the half-dragon, which is kind of similar to a dragonborn, but here a half-dragon doesn't necessarily have to look draconic, whereas a dragonborn inherently looks draconic, but they do have a similarity in that you are in alignment with a particular type of dragon that gives you some kind of feature. You have a breath weapon, things like that. Hi, Mizu, hello. You're right. The construct is objectively better than the Warforged as far as design goes. I would agree. That said, I haven't played a Warforged before. Next one is a Minotaur, which is exactly what it sounds like. Minotaur, again, unique to Runeterra. Looking at you, Alistair, our main Minotaur in that universe. We also have trolls, and there's some different types of trolls. You got trolls of the Freljord versus trolls of the High Desert of Shurima, which are going to be different, but troll is one of our origins. I would say the most popular one that I have seen people talk about wanting to play are Vastaya. And Vastaya are our absolutely beautifully designed, kind of anthropomorphic, animal mixed with human kind of thing. Your Zion Rakan, but also your Nami, everything in between, Rengar, Ari, all of those are Vastaya. A half of my players are playing a Vastaya or something Vastaya related, and I think that they're fantastic, have a lot of cool flexibility there. And then our second to last one is Yordles. Yordles, I didn't put this because I think they're so different because they are, the Runeterra version, but they're kind of like if you mixed a pixie with a gnome, with a fairy, and a bunch of other things, you would get a Yordle. But really, there's no 5e equivalent. And then lastly, Runeborn. And the way that I describe Runeborn to my players is Runeborn says you have something else you want to make that is really, really weird and magical, and it doesn't fit in one of these other boxes, so you're a Runeborn. And all of these origins are, for the most part, wildly different than 5th edition. So far, our big comparison is we both have humans, and that's kind of it. So I would say that for origins, keeping things different, I think we're being super duper successful. Step number 3 is class. Now, class is not your profession. It's not the job. Theoretically, your job is that you're an adventurer. Your class is your training and your skills that you have developed as an adventurer. It's kind of like the role that you fill within your adventuring party. And again, for this orange stuff, that's things that are the same idea as 5th edition. Also, by having a class at level 1, you are already ahead of most people in the world. The assumption is your average human is level 0. We also have some subclasses that I'm not going to talk too much about. There are a couple that I might throw 1 or 2 out there to kind of give a feeling for how they work, but for the most part, we are focusing just on the classes as a whole. Now, I will say ahead of time, I think that class is where, aside from the use of abilities and skills, I think that class is where it is the most obvious that this started out as basically 5th edition. And while there have been a lot of really cool changes, a lot of really cool improvements, I do think that a complaint that I will hear from people when Runarcana officially comes out and people start playing it is how similar a lot of the classes are. But I think that's not a huge problem. There's some familiarity, but, just wanted to get out there that that's true. So starting off with our first class, that is the Acolyte. Now, for our Acolyte, we have a couple of different things that are going to be the different rights that you have and things that you can channel. And the Acolyte is our equivalent to a cleric. And it is so incredibly similar. I do not know how you could possibly not realize that that is what it is. Instead of divining with a specific being, you have a different kind of aspect of the magical world that you could specialize in. Buffing people up using storms, or you can bring people back to life with necromancy. You can heal people with the stars. And while it is very, very cool, it is very much just, okay, I guess it's kind of like a paladin. I guess that's fair. Hello, Ardu. Big stretch and a drink. I think it's cleric, and then some of the rights align with paladin. But I guess it is kind of both. So cleric / paladin. Our next one is our Arcanist, and Arcanist I think is really, really cool because one of the things that I always thought was weird about 5th edition is like, well, if you get your magic from this place, you get, these kinds of magic things, but if you get magic from reading, it's this kind of thing. And it makes you say, well, Harry Potter's not a wizard, he's a sorcerer, according to 5th edition. And it doesn't matter here. You're an Arcanist. You are a person with strong arcane potency that is doing cool things. The ways that we differentiate are you have different awakenings. Did you channel your magic through celestial, elemental, or spiritual means? And I think that that's really cool. This is going to affect the runes that you use. It's also going to be a mana and things like that. Also, you're going to pick a glyph, which is the way that I explain it might not be exactly what it is, but it's kind of like a special branch of magic. It's not quite a school of magic because elemental is a glyph, and it's not like each individual, it's not like divination necessarily. So it's kind of both. But hemomancy, elemental magic, necromancy, all of these are kind of things that you will get specifically through some of the different glyphs. They have different names, but that is kind of what they will channel into. Arcana points is also a feature of the Arcanist. They are just sorcery points, but have some additional features that you can do. But Arcana points are sorcery points from 5th edition for all intents and purposes. I think the single best improvement that is made in the magic system between 5th edition to Runarcana, that Runarcana just does miles better, is the use of mana. it is so hard to narratively describe spell slots. And that's something that I've always thought was really, really weird. Oh, sorry. Sorry, team. I've already cast all the 4th level spells I can for the day. Sure. Is your wizard textbook really describing things in level of 1, 2, 3, or 4? I guess it could, but mana is just a very organic, natural way to say, I have a certain amount of arcane energy within me, certain amount of arcane potency, and whenever I use it, it goes down, and periodically it comes back, and there are things that I can do. And think of it more as a pool, I think makes a lot more sense. So the fact that this uses mana, and they all use mana instead of spell slots, but to putting it in Arcanist made the most sense. And really, I think that the magic system, while it has a lot of overlap with the 5e magic system, I think has added a lot of really amazing stuff to it. I think it's organized a lot better. I think that it's just really, really cool, the amount of depth that you have. But it is also something that is still being reworked. One of the last editions of Runarcana is going to be reworking the magic system. So I would assume that at its core, these ideas and these pillars of design will be the same. But there are things to be changed and to be tweaked and updated because there is just a ton of it. Next one, we have the Bodhisattva, which is a lot of different things. And when I say monk equivalent, I do not mean that you are a person who runs around punching things. I am trying to draw comparisons that are easy to understand for someone coming from 5th edition. So there are a couple of things that are similar between the monk and the Bodhisattva. The first one is you are a martial character and you have ki. And ki, just like 5e monks, gets expended as its own system where you can punch things and whatnot. And you can also, slice things and a bunch of other stuff. So ki as a resource functions very similarly, where the Bodhisattva, I think, is a lot better, which you'll also see with the shaman, is that you are not just expending it on like the same 7 or 8 things like a lot of 5th edition has. In Runarcana, you're going to collect things called sutras. And sutra is a really advanced technique that you can unlock that might be based on your class or your subclass. There are some general ones. There are scores of them to choose from. And they can do everything from, making you stronger, making you faster, inflicting certain conditions, all kinds of things that are going to really make you feel stronger. The other thing is most of the bodhisattvas that I can think of in League of Legends are not people who punch stuff. Like Irelia and Master Yi are examples of people that would fall under this. So they are kind of channeling this ki into sutras to enhance their martial abilities. And I think it's a really, really cool resource to channel, which I think is fun. Next we have the Brute, and the Brute, again, has some modifications and whatnot, but I would say 85% of the Brute is the Barbarian. There are only so many things you can change. There's a little more leaning into the magical side of things, which I think is cool. But at its core, if you are trying to understand, what is a Brute, think Barbarian, and you are most of the way there. And then you would read the deeper dive into the Brute to get a little bit more about it. The same thing is true for the combatant. Your combatant is your fighter. I think they do a lot better job in Runarcana of different fighting stances and, different subclass choices and whatnot. But at its core, they function very similarly with the multi-attack and even second wind as a trait and picking a fighting style. So it's very accessible for people coming from 5th edition. They expanded a bit, but they didn't do too much to where it's going to be confusing or overwhelming. Moving on to Hunter. Hunter is like the Ranger. It is really similar. You have a favored enemy, favored terrain types of things. But this Hunter just does so much more. Just across the board. It is more magical. My favorite thing is, I think the biggest weakness that the Ranger in 5th edition has is, when you have a beast companion, it doesn't do a whole lot, and in some cases you're punished for trying to use it, whereas in Runarcana you are incentivized, like, make the most of your class as a familiar or a companion. It can do more, you can invest more into their growth and development. The mechanics are just fantastic. So Hunter is the next class that I would like to make a character for, because I think the beast companion system is just so thoughtful and so well designed that I think it just makes it a lot more engaging to play. Marksman, this one does not have a 5e thing, so this is our first thing where I couldn't even come up with something that would be like 5e. Marksman is your gunslinger or your sniper. It can be other things as well. There's a subclass that's kind of a run and gun or a duelist. You have an arcane shooter, so it can kind of be whatever you want that is related to guns, because, Jin uses his guns a lot differently than Caitlyn, who uses her sniper a lot different from Lucian and others. So I think that they do a pretty good job designing marksman. Caleb in Champions of Runeterra is our marksman, and I think that he does a really nice job of that sniper experience. Our Mercurial is basically the rogue, down to having the assassin versus the thief as some of our subclasses. I think that they clean up some balancing things really well, and they've definitely added some cool features. The use of magic in it is definitely enhanced substantially, and I think they do a really nice job there. But ultimately, they are fairly similar. You could read all of your stuff for Runarcana one time, but have played a rogue in 5th edition, and I think that you will have a really easy time connecting the dots between the two. And then lastly, the coolest, best class, uncontested, not even close, also the strongest by all playtesting that I have done, dare I say overpowered in many situations, but is so freaking cool, is the Shaman. And the Shaman is one who channels energy and the spirits. If you were to combine a monk and a druid and a cleric and sometimes a barbarian and a number of other things from 5th edition, you would get the Shaman. But it was so many different things, like, it's not even worth saying it's this, but League of Legends. The main thing is its connection with spirits. They are spellcasters, but they also have ki, and they also have access to sutras and kind of an advanced version of the sutras called Vel, which are absolutely badass, really, really cool. You also have access to kind of a spiritual ally, which isn't quite the same as a familiar, but functions kind of similarly. Our shaman is Kefri Oinani, who is an Uvikat Vestayan shaman, and one of the things that Kefri has is literally Airy, like the rune from League of Legends, as their spiritual ally that they can use to grant the help action on people. So at any time, any major thing, they can grant advantage, which is really, really cool. The different subclasses, I am not super intimately familiar with word for word, but we have essentially a shapeshifter, a summoner, and a channeler. A shapeshifter is your more classic 5e druid type, but has a bunch of other stuff. Your summoner has a really cool familiar that seems to buff you up that you work with, and then a channeler seems to be a little bit more martial combat focused and whatnot. And you kind of have, well said, Mizu. Your shaman has access to almost everything from another class, not necessarily to the same degree. It's kind of a generalist, but then you kind of make it more specific and niche as you design it. So I think that they do a really, really nice job. The shaman is the coolest class, and it's not even close. So those are all of our classes. So to recap on classes, overall, they are unique. They have a lot of unique features. They have a lot of unique traits. But the bulk of the class system is so similar to 5th edition, you'll have a very easy time following it, but you will feel enveloped into the world of League of Legends. And I think that the thing that I try to get across to people is Runarcana is its own system, but it also relies a lot on 5th edition's core mechanics, and I don't think that that's a problem, and enough has been added that they are not the same system. And I'm not going to say that again until the end, because otherwise I would say this whole bunch of lie. So Acolyte, kind of like a cleric, but also some of the subclasses are like a paladin. Arcanist is like the sorcerer wizard combo with a bunch of extra stuff. The Bodhisattva, the monk equivalent, only in that it has ki, and that you are a martial class that is enhancing through some kind of spiritual magic, but it has a bunch of other stuff. I described it as an evolution, and then also uses weapons. Brute is barbarian, combatant is fighter, hunter is ranger, but a lot of the complaints that people have a lot about ranger is fixed. Marksman is your gunslinger, which does not have an equivalent, which is awesome. Mercurial, that's your rogue, plus a little bit. Shaman is badass, awesome, adds a whole bunch of stuff, but does fill the role that a druid would if you were to play that particular subclass. So all in all, accessible, still unique, but a good amount of overlap. Okay, number 4 is detailing. So this goes into a number of different things. First, we have our languages, our general descriptors. Those are all the same. How tall are you? What is your general look and whatnot. Hard to make this different. Every system, this would be basically the same thing. Essence and behavior, I think, is one of the best ways in a system that I have seen to incentivize your character to... or excuse me, for your player to play their character as their character was intended to, narratively. So you pick certain descriptors and behaviors that you're going to follow. What is the essence of that character? And as you do that, your DM or your game master grants you resources, and this resource can be traded for a couple of cool bonuses, giving it yourself advantage on a roll if the GM allows it, things like that. And I think that's really, really cool. It is totally unique to Runarcana, and I think the nice thing is it encourages consistent narrative roleplay, and there is also a system for changing your essence. If you started off as kind of the lone wolf of the group, well, you can only play so many sessions with the person who says, yeah, the party goes over there, but I'm going to go do the other thing by myself, like my rogue often does, or excuse me, my mercurial often does, or used to, not so much anymore. But you can only do that so many times before you get bored. So if that's your essence at first, awesome. But there are systems in place that as you evolve, as you grow, because, it's a role-playing game, it is not a tactical game explicitly, that's just part of it. I think it really does a nice job there, and it rewards growth and thinking as your character, not just as, what's going to get me as the player more gold or a new magic item, because that's not the only thing that you have as an incentive. And then the other part with detailing is past, and your past is your background. I don't know if they are completely unchanged, but there are so many pasts that have the same name as a 5th edition background. They are, for all intents and purposes, the same thing. They give you a tiny bit of things about your narrative. They tell you a little bit about what your essence might be. They tell you maybe a proficiency you might get, or add stuff to what you start with. There are no real major differences, and I think that's fine. I think the background system's simple enough that it's not a huge deal that they're almost identical. I have not looked at literally every background, but of the ones that I have read through, they're very, very similar. Yeah, that's true, and they're new ones. Yeah, they have some extra stuff. You're right. My point is mechanically, and like if you were to look at a Runarcana past and a 5th edition background, 70% of it, you would say, I know exactly what this is because they look the same, and then Runarcana adds some stuff. The point that I'm trying to make with a lot of this, Mizu, is I don't want people to just think that Runarcana is 5th edition supplemental material, and that it is different, it has its own things. So when the things are, it's 5th edition and... I am clarifying, like, they are the same thing. We have just given you a little bit more. But the ultimate structure is the same. Okay, crafts. Crafts are fucking cool. So cool. I have always wanted in a tabletop role-playing game to, like, level up skills. Because I come from a big MMO background. I loved Guild Wars, I loved WoW, I played a tiny bit of EverQuest. My main one was RuneScape, but I also played New World and Lost Ark and all these other ones. Crafts make my heart happy. I will say, before I talk about crafts too much, the challenge I have run into with crafts in my game is we only play for 2 or 3 hours a week, 3 or 4 maybe weeks out of 4 or 5. And to keep the narrative going and to keep, let people also do the combat, some of the struggles that we have is like finding time to sit down and do crafts. So I feel like when we do crafts, I have kind of forced it a little bit and said like, hey, you are meeting with a master crafts person. They are going to do some training with you. And I think that I kind of rely a lot on my players to say, hey, I have this craft, I'd like to use it. But it is really, really cool and really makes the game feel like an MMO. Oh, I even said that. It's kind of an MMO feeling. So there's a bunch of different crafts. There's a bunch of major crafts and some minor crafts. Examples of the major crafts: alchemy, making, potions and whatnot. Enchanting is what it sounds like. Weaponsmithing, creating weapons. Locksmith is kind of your locksmithing tools, but also creating locks. My favorite one is the Techmaturge, which used to be its own class, and I understand why it was gotten rid of. I will continue to say that I don't agree. But the Techmaturge is essentially how you take your class. Let's say you're a brute and you're a Techmaturge. You are now a brute that invents magical technology, or arcane technology. And the equivalent, I can't think of what it's called for the life of me. Artificer. Gosh darn it. I literally have played a bunch of artificers. So Techmaturge is like if you said, I'm this, but then I'm going to multi-class as artificer, with a bunch of extra stuff without it taking up a multi-classing thing. And you could say the same about the rest of them, but because people have played artificers, because Techmaturge used to be a class, I feel like that is a way to describe it to some people. And then we also have some minor crafts, like artist, you can do different kinds of art. Collector is like a harvester, which could be mining, but it could also be getting monster parts from something you killed. And then player being like a game or an instrument and things like that. The thing that I really like about the craft system is you level it up by playing and doing the things, and it also levels up as your player does, because you're assuming that you are using the craft in your downtime. In addition, you are collecting recipes called formulas, where if I have seen someone use a really cool, great sword, then maybe I have watched them enough time and I asked for the blueprint of it, then now I can replicate that great sword with some practice because I have that formula. And I think that's really cool. A pop culture equivalent here in my brain is like in Avatar: The Last Airbender, when they find bending scrolls and they go, oh, it's this really cool, bending form. Now I know how to do that because I've read it. I can practice it and become proficient at it, which is just like they do in the Last Airbender TTRPG system, which is really cool as well. And you should check that out too. So crafts are really, really awesome. I think they're fantastic. And I would say crafts and essence are two of the three most unique things about Runarcana to me as a person making a character, and I think they do a really, really nice job with. Number 5. Ooh, I said 3. 4 really unique things. Step number 5, heritages and enhancements. Heritage is freaking awesome, and I think takes the character creation process and makes it so incredibly customizable beyond all of the things you see in 5th edition that you really feel like this is my character and it's going to be so much different. You could have an arcane or an arcanist celestial with the scarlet glyph that's a yordle from Bilgewater, and you could have 10 of them. But with different heritage decisions, you get 10 completely different characters. And I think that that's really, really neat. So heritage. Heritages are the traits of your ancestors being manifested into you. That is how it's described in the wiki. And I think that that's really, really cool. Your ancestors have these traits and they are manifested into you. But just like some traits that we have, we might not realize we have them until we try them. And you might not try them until you're a grown adult. I didn't, I may have, started playing an instrument at 9, but I feel like I picked up on it pretty naturally. And if I started playing at 25 for the first time, there would be some natural, inclination towards it from my opinion. Origins grant heritage points. So this is a purchasable feature that you get at the start of character creation and that you will get later in the game. So different origins grant different amounts of heritage points. You will also get an additional heritage at levels 5, 9, 13, and 17. And heritages, currently there are literally hundreds. I don't remember the exact count I did, but I think it was like 200 and something. Not all of those will exist in the 1.0 release, but just to show the amount of thought that has been put into it, there's a ton, and I think that's fantastic. Heritages also exist generally based on two things. What is your origin? And what is your region? And a lot of them are locked behind one of those two things. So there will be certain ones that are unique to Noxians or certain ones that are unique to trolls that just wouldn't make sense with other things. And it's all kinds of stuff. A lot of them have proficiencies, but they also have really neat features and traits that you can get all over the place. Some of them are really specific, like if you have a feature that comes with being an arboreal, which is one of the types of anthroplante, you might have a trait through a heritage that bolsters some particular thing that comes with that. And I think that that's really, really neat. One of the other things that's really awesome is variant heritages. And variant heritages is a way of saying, like, you're kind of, there are class exclusive ones as well. Awesome. I missed that in the wiki. That's really, really cool. Variant heritages are a way that you can say, you know, I want to be a Vestayan, but I also want to be kind of this other thing. So I've listed the ones that I found. Some of them are self-explanatory. An amphibian, you are an amphibious version of it. Colossus, something about the way you were created or born makes you very, very large. Half Vestaya is just like saying half elf. Elemental nativity, meaning you are more inclined to elemental magics. Nebulon, which I think is rad, is like essentially like a gaseous form held within a suit, which you see some of these in Arcane, if you've seen that show. Technological progression is kind of like being a cyborg. The question that I always ask myself is, at what point of technological progression have you replaced enough of yourself that you're actually just a construct? And I think of it as like a half construct. So you can give yourself like a cybernetic arm or something. Again, very common in Arcane. And then my personal favorite is Risen. One of my players in version 0.89 5 years ago created a Wraith. And Wraith was deleted from the game. A lot of things have been deleted from the game as we've evolved and kind of moved things around. And Wraith has remanifested as a variant heritage, and almost all of the same features are available. And through Risen being that variant heritage, you get access to, I would say, the coolest of some of these traits: the ability to become incorporeal, the ability, you have come back from the dead, essentially, or you might have some kind of demonic nature to you, which I think is really, really neat. So heritage, 100% unique. They are totally original, and I love that. Enhancements, which you can get at level 4, 8, whatever. They are essentially the feats of 5th edition, but there are more of them, and I think they're a lot more thoughtful. There are some overlaps. Some of the 5th edition feats also exist as enhancements in Runarcana. I feel like more of the enhancements that I have noticed also give bonus ability score compared to the features, or it's not features, the feats in 5th edition. Some of them do it, but when you're hitting these level mile marks, you're like, oh, do I want this cool feature or / enhancement, or do I want to take +2 to my intelligence? Well, with a lot of the enhancements, you can do both. And I think that that's cool. And essentially, they're the same. But for the most part, this is very, very unique to Runarcana, which I think is awesome. And as I said, many of them give ability score bonuses. Okay. Here we get the thing that when I heard about Runarcana a couple months after Ardu published on, I think, Reddit. I think I found it on Reddit. No, I Googled League of Legends RPG or League of Legends D&D, and that was how I found it. And when I read about runes, I thought, this is perfect. This is the thing that 5th edition needs in order to be League of Legends-ified, that I think has done a really, really excellent job. And I would say, big letters, I think this is the most epic part of this system, and what really sets it apart from a lot of other ones, because in Runeterra, everyone is inherently connected in some way to the magic of the world. It may not have manifested itself, but through the world runes that are embedded in Runeterra itself, you have some kind of magical potency that you can channel. So players will select runic powers that are going to evolve with your character. So you start off with a runic pulse, and this is like a passive. It might be something as simple as dealing a little bit of extra damage situationally, or maybe modifying a stat here or there. It's some passive thing that you interact with regularly and can kind of shape the way that you interact with the world. Runic pulse, very, very simple. There's a bunch of them. Runes themselves are essentially one of two things. The way that they work mechanically is it's like a toggleable effect. When you shoot your gun, if you choose to use your rune, it does bonus damage of this damage type. Or when you heal, you use this rune, and now your heal is modified in this way. And almost all, if not all, runes have a lone effect where they can be used as themselves. And I think that that is very, very cool. One of the ones that Lily, our Vestayan Techmaturge, used is called Luminary Spear. And we were taking out this really, really big, powerful void monster. And she used Luminary Spear, which uses luminary damage, which is something that I have decided in my campaign that void creatures are weak to, and did like 150 damage with one attack, but she only gets to use it once, because she has made it so powerful. So the way that runes work is every handful of levels you get access to a new rune, but in between every other level or so, you are going to enhance the rune that you have chosen. So it's like, choose a rune, then a couple levels go by, you enhance it, a couple levels go by, enhance it, a couple levels go by, now pick a new rune, which is really, really cool. We will do a full video just on runes later. And you gain access and improvements every few levels. Something that goes with this is called a rune essence, and I honestly still kind of have a hard time understanding what is so special about rune essences, other than it feels like a set of runes that go together thematically, that like you should choose all of them together. Sometimes they have like a prerequisite, and it feels really good and synergistic. I feel like it's a lot of like narratively justifying why you can do these runes. And overall, I think the rune essences are really cool. I don't have any players that are utilizing that feature, but the entire rune system is just really awesome, really, really unique, and I think adds a lot to the quality of Runarcana in a way that 5th edition doesn't have anything like that. Usually they have like 2 or 3 effects. Okay, got it. So they're also a little more complex than regular runes too. That makes sense. And usually, from what I've seen, there's like a series where it's like you might take a couple of them consistently. And I think that they're really, really cool. So runes, 10 out of 10, thumbs up of approval. Now, abilities and skills. This is where, if you were to look at the character sheet, you would say, wait a second, isn't this the 5th edition character sheet? And we're going to look at both of the character sheets as our last thing in a minute. Base abilities are identical to 5th edition. Strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. No effort was made to make them different, which is fine. You know, that's totally okay. Lots of systems use the same things. And lots of systems that say that they're different, it's like, okay, mind, body, and soul they are all, you know, that's strength and constitution and dexterity put together, whatever. So the abilities are the same. The methods that you acquire them are the same. They recommend point buy. The determining of modifiers are the same as 5th edition. Literally the only difference between abilities and skills between 5th edition and Runarcana is Runarcana adds the technology skill. And that is it. Unless something has changed since I have last looked, which I don't think it has. So this is one where you would say, this is the reason it feels like I'm still playing 5th edition with a bunch of supplemental content. And I don't think that that's a problem, because 5th edition is a very good system, and a lot of the complaints people have about 5th edition, I think that Runarcana does a nice job addressing, especially things like some of the stuff in combat, which we're not even going to touch combat today. We'll do combat a different day. But the core of the gameplay loop is the same. Abilities and skills are the same. They are not different whatsoever, except technology exists. Now, before we take a look at my kind of closing summary, I wanted to do a quick look at the character sheets, because this is supposed to be comparing and contrasting the character building. So this is our 5th edition character sheet. We've got our abilities, our skills, our saves, general combat related things, narrative things, and then attacks and spell casting, and then what we have and what kinds of things we can do, generally speaking. And then we've got a second page that's just narrative stuff, and a third page for spells. Let's talk about our similarities and our differences. Character name, class level, race alignment, etc., experience. All of that is the same on both. At the top, the difference being we have our region, and the words are different, and we've specified our past and our essence and behavior. So like the core of the idea are similar. Essence is kind of, in my opinion, just a much better system for character narrative choices than alignment. I think alignment has its place, but I don't think it's in here. So the top, covers generally the same kind of stuff. Our ability scores over here, and our skills are over here, and our saves are over here, but all of those things still exist in the identical form. Proficiency bonus and inspiration are both mechanics. Those go there, which are there. We have our gold up here instead of down here with our inventory, but so your economic stuff is up there, but it still exists. Initiative and speed and AC, those are all in the middle as opposed to in the middle on the left, but they're all still there. Realizing you can't see my cursor, so this is going to make this difficult, but that's okay. We're describing it narratively and it'll be fine. Character notes has been kind of condensed of all of the things they have, like traits and ideals and bonds and whatever. It's kind of a lot, and a lot of this really comes down to the essence and behavior that you choose, so I think it makes sense that those aren't there. We also have our death saves. We have exhaustion comes up a lot more in Runarcana, so our exhaustion level is also featured on the character sheet, which I think is cool. And then a place for tracking experience and HP. All of that is the same. We can see when you mouse above text boxes specific. Oh, got it. Okay. Good to know. Next time I'll add my cursor as a thing. We're still getting the use of it. Okay, attacks and spell casting are the same thing. Equipment and belongings are the same thing. Languages and crafts, proficiencies, heritages, and enhancements. We have just kind of broken up the other proficiencies and languages into smaller bits, but I think that totally makes sense. And then features and traits would go kind of depending on where its source is, instead of just all in one box. Spells all go here. We have our mana points, spell DC, and the spell hit bonus. Mana points, I'm wondering if it would be overly complicated, and you guys are all in the chat, to have current mana and max mana, kind of like we have hit points of current and total. I think that might be a good thing to include. And then for our runes, we have just kind of our descriptions down here. And for a lot of this, the intent is you print out the piece of paper and you're writing on it, or you're editing the PDF. So like they don't really need to say your runic pulse and then your next rune and the enhancement or improvement and the next improvement and then the next rune and the improvement and the improvement. It's a text box. You don't need a whole bunch of other complicated stuff. There is a second page that is right here. Which is currently just space to write things, but that is what the second page looks like. Overall, I would say the character sheet looks really awesome, and I think the character creation process makes sense. I do wonder about some of the logic of like, why is our money up here when our equipment is down here? I understand money is not necessarily equipment, but it seems like moved for the sake of being moved. But overall, I think the design is really cool. I really like the little hexagons everywhere, marking once for proficient, once for expertise, because expertise is also more accessible. Graphically, I just think it looks really, really nice. And I think that's awesome. So I like to close with our comparison summary, going between the two different systems. Runarcana adds a lot of amazing stuff that makes it so much more than just this is 5th edition, and it adds a lot, it changes a lot, and it kept some of the things that you know and love, but ultimately is a very, very well-designed system that is being cleaned up to be fantastic. So general character concepts, they are the same thing because it is just designing the idea behind your character, which is true for any RPG system. Origin is 5th edition race. It has a couple of extra things that come with it. You have access to new heritages, for example, but ultimately they function very, very similarly. The region is totally unique. Where you are from has a lot of mechanical ramifications, and it requires you to really know, like, if I'm from the Shadow Isles, what does that mean? What does that look like? How does that affect the way that I'm going to play? Class, the general structure is the same. You could have never read a Runarcana class before, but you know all of the 5e ones, and you would be able to read and understand how things work, with unlocking certain things at different levels and having subclasses and stuff. Mostly they are similar. Acolyte is very similar to Cleric / Paladin. Brute is Barbarian. Combatant is Fighter. Hunter is a cooler version of Ranger. Mercurial is a cooler version of Rogue. The rest of them are quite a bit different, but I would say those are the ones where if you were overwhelmed with the amount of stuff in Runarcana, but you've played 5th edition, I would play one of these 5 classes to start, and then learn about the rest of the system, and then jump into a deeper class. Somewhat related, Arcanist is kind of like Sorcerer and Wizard, and Bodhisattva is kind of like Monk with a bunch of other stuff. And then mostly unique is Marksman and Shaman. Detailing is mostly unique to Runarcana, very little overlap with the 5th edition. Essence and behavior and the crafting system are totally unique, so incentivizing good, consistent roleplay, and then also, the entire crafting system, nothing like that in 5th edition. And then our past is just the 5th edition background with some extra features and traits that come with it, and there's a bunch more of them, but functionally and structurally they are the same. Heritage is totally unique, which is really, really cool. Love Heritage. Enhancements, those are your 5th edition feats, so again, those are the same thing, but there are more of them and they have cooler features. And then lastly second to last is our runes, which are a completely unique system. And then abilities and skills are identical with the addition of technology. So when we look at it this way, it's mostly unique. There's a lot of new stuff. When you look at it page by page comparison, I would say there's about 65 or 70% overlap, but that 30 to 35% uniqueness carries a ton of weight and really changes the way that you experience the game. But when you are using the same engine, which is really what it is, the same engine, it's gonna feel similar. The same thing is true for Powered by the Apocalypse games, like playing Dungeon World versus any other 2d6 system that uses Powered by the Apocalypse with a playbook. The core engine is the same, so that makes sense that there's going to be a lot of overlap. So I do not think it is anything to criticize to say that there is a lot of overlap. Overall, if you like 5th edition, and you like League of Legends or Legends of Runeterra, or you liked Arcane, and you would love Runarcana. If you like 5th edition and you want just more cool stuff all in one cohesive system as opposed to adding bonus content from 5 other content creators, you'll love Runarcana. I am publishing a video that is me doing a little bit of a monologue about how awesome this system is, and by the time this video comes out on YouTube, it'll already be out on YouTube, but I freaking love it. I think that the comparison is very, very reasonable. And yeah, that's the whole gosh darn thing. You should check this game out. And I hope that for those of you who know 5th edition and don't know Runarcana, can use this as kind of a guide when you are making your decisions or talking to your friends about trying to convince them to play and pick up the game, that you can use this as a very, very long resource to fill in the gaps of anything that might be missing. So thank you so much. You've all been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much to Bestiary, Mizu, and Ardu for all of the commentary in the chat and things, adding in all of the things that you have said, and for all of the hard work you do in developing this game. Have an absolutely amazing rest of your day, and go tell someone that you love them, because I promise you they don't hear it enough, just like you probably don't. Peace.